Hey everybody, welcome back to Ravenstead. It's time for another build. I was thinking about a stone circle, megalith circle, something like that. So I'm just going to lay out the base here. I've been working with thinner bases lately. This is about 1 centimeter thick. And just laying out some different levels on it. I cut that out with a hot wire cutter. And I'm going to use the craft knife here. I don't cut myself, so don't worry about that. We're just going to slice in some different levels to it. Give it a little bit more interest. Make it so it doesn't look quite like a coaster. Once we get these levels cut in, kind of lay out where I want everything, and then we'll do some texturing. Just going to bevel those edges a little bit too. Looks like I'm ready for a new craft knife. That blade's getting a little dull. When you see it kind of tearing out at the foam like that, it usually means the blade's pretty dull. Or you're not using a shallow enough angle. In this case, it's just dull. So I think that's going to be how I'll set up maybe 2 of those and then some smaller pillars. I'm using a brass brush to kind of rough up the edges a little bit. And then in the center of this piece, I wanted some cobblestones. So I cut some rounded pieces of foam and then made thin slices of them to get those stones. And we'll hot glue those down. Got a good video of my hand there. Sorry about that. Focus is troublesome. There we go. Looks kind of odd right now. We'll bevel the edges of those little stones and then kind of blend that in later with some flocking. Putting that in a little container with some rocks from the driveway. Give them a good shake, and that puts a nice little bit of texture on those larger megalith pieces. There we go. A couple other little columns in there. I'm going to put in some PVA glue. Kind of using this as mortar to kind of fill in the gaps there, but also I decided to stick down a little bit of cat litter, fresh cat litter. I'm using pretty fine stuff here as little rocks. I like the cat litter because it's made out of bentonite clay and it soaks up the extra moisture in the glue. It gives a good bond, and it also dries a lot faster. I wanted to be able to see those cobblestones in the center, so while the glue is still green here, just going to use my finger and kind of rub away the areas that I want exposed. It's a little messy, but it all worked out. I kind of got some of the finer dust in that cat litter down into those grooves between the cobblestones. It gave it a pretty cool texture. I'm just going to black this piece out with a mixture of Mod Podge and black acrylic paint. I mix that 50-50. That just makes for a good surface to work on for dry brushing. Makes it durable and also gives you that black undertone for establishing good shadows and high contrasts. Going in with a medium gray and then a light gray. And then once I pick out all the details with that light gray, I've been using a new color here. It's tapioca, so a very pale tan color. Those little rocks really turned out nicely. I think I'll probably be using more of that in future builds. That's really satisfying. I like going over those wide stone surfaces. You see a lot of difference that dry brushing makes. So that's that tapioca color going on. You can see it there on that paper towel. It's pretty pale. And I try and use that fairly sparingly. This is a color called cinnamon. I thought that would kind of help bring out the difference in textures between the cobblestones and the gravel. And then I ended up putting a little bit of that on the megaliths there, just to kind of tie in the textures and the tones. And then we'll establish a little bit more variety with our washes. We'll go over that here in just a little bit. A little bit of true green on the areas where I think I'm going to probably put some flocking for grassy areas. And let's go ahead and do our washes here. This first one is burnt umber acrylic ink mixed with water. Got a couple drops of jet dry in there. That helps it kind of flow across the surface, cuts down on the bubbles. So I'll get a good coat of that all over the piece, and then a little bit of green wash. I just make that with that true green and mixed with water. I keep them pretty thin, about 50-50. So when they dry, the tone drops several values. That's a little Vallejo rust wash going right on the piece. If you're not familiar with the techniques I'm using here, I'm using a wet on wet technique for my washes. The paint was dry, but then the washes go on one layer after another, so they kind of blend. So you have to make sure that you don't overmix. Then we're going to put in some flocking. I'm just painting on some PVA glue in the areas where I think I might need some grass or mossy areas. The piece looks pretty decent just with the washes, so if you didn't want to mess with flocking, you could just use the painting and the and the washes to get a pretty good looking piece of terrain. But I like the flocking. It helps me hide my mistakes, any places that I might have missed or overpainted or gotten a glob of hot glue on or something like that. You can just cover that right up with some flocking. So that's just fine flocking I use for grassy areas. Then I decided to go in with a little bit of purple flocking that I make for myself. It's a mixture of sphagnum moss that's dyed purple and purple lichen. I'll just dribble that on here and there. Tap off the excess, and it gives us a little splash of color in there. Then I decided to get really crazy and put some dandelions in there. So I'm just going to dab on a little bit of glue here and there. In retrospect, I wish I had used a toothpick to make smaller dots of glue, but it worked out. And then a little yellow flower flocking. And yes, that got absolutely everywhere. Just give it a little tap to make sure it sticks down. Get rid of the excess. And now we got nice little splotches of color there. Put in some clump foliage. I'm just hot gluing this down. I like using the hot glue when I can get away with it because it's quick and it's easy. You do have to pick those little glue strings off though. That can get a little tedious. And here I'm just kind of blending everything in, covering up areas that are just too wide open, building more shadows, and giving our little critters somewhere to hide. I imagine this little stone circle has probably a fox or two that run through there, so they need a place to hang out. Well, that's the last piece there. Let me give you a closer look. I'll spin it for you. That's the stone circle. There it is. Appreciate you guys watching. If you have any comments for me, please leave them down below. I'd love to hear from you. I did go over this piece with matte polyurethane spray. I'm thinking about trying to get a flat spray because this is just getting a little too glossy sometimes. There we got our druid up there working on a ritual. I think the yellow flowers work pretty well. Thanks for watching another video, guys. I'll see you soon.